All right, welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast. Got a special guest today. Her name is Kim Raimondi. Kim, welcome to the show.
Hey, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm stoked to have you. There's lots of stuff for us to talk about, just to kind of preface this and get it out there in front of the audience so they know who we're talking to today. Kim notably works for the Pelican company. So you're otherwise known as Pelican on Instagram. And you put out some pretty fun and cool content there, just educating the customer base about the different things that are out there and some of the ways that you're using the products, and to give people some insights and, maybe drive some traffic or some different thinking. There's a lot of innovation happening at that company, and I want to talk about that. You work with some really cool customers on the sales end of things. You're also a volunteer firefighter, and I want to dig into that because that's not something I know a lot about, and I know that there's a large population of volunteers out there that keep our public and our communities safe respond in time of need. And so I want to dig into that and give some people some insight there. And then I just want to talk about you and kind of your career path and how you got there, because you have an interesting story. So I'm stoked to have you. Thank you again for being here. Where are you in the world?
I am in the Great Garden State, New Jersey. So everybody loves it. I'm the biggest advocate other than Tony Soprano, but we know how that ended, or didn't we? But yeah, Jersey girl, born and raised.
Jersey girl. So your entire life, everything's been out there in Jersey?
Yeah.
What's it like growing up in New Jersey?
It's awesome. So we're right outside New York City. I also grew up on the shore. So I am always on the bay, on the ocean. It's much different than when you fly into Newark. No hate against Newark, but there are actual garden parts and like an ocean and really cool stuff that's all truncated with 18 million or however many people live along with me, but it's a good.
Is it really? I had no idea there were that many people in Jersey.
Live here, but lots of traffic.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, it's like, so growing up on the water, right? There's industry there. Like what growing up, like what did that look like for you? Were you involved in any of that as a kid, like working or like family? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, no industry for me. Like that is my serenity and zen. So it's the tail end of striper season. So I'm always fishing. I crab, I clam. Now in my adult life, I help a lot with advocacy in this organization called Reclaim the Bay, which repopulates the bay to grow clams. So this is not the point of our conversation, but just the ecology of it is super cool to give back and kind of just see literally everything that's growing and changing on the coast.
Yeah, I've been by the water for the majority of my life. There was a period of my life where I lived sort of in I did live in the Central Valley of California. And what that gave me very good access to, was the mountains, the Sierra Mountains. And it's a different type of water up there. It's amazing. But I know for me at some point, as I get old and eventually I'm going to die, I have to do that near the water. Like I have to be somewhere. It's got to be a mountain, lake, mountain, river, or the water there. When you said serenity, it is my happy place. And I try to get away and get out there. Last weekend, it was funny. I was talking to some friends down in Texas who were down there teaching some firearms training stuff over the weekend. And they're just talking about how miserably hot it is down there. Mm-hmm. And, out here, we had 78-degree weather. We got surfboards out, surfed a couple times on Saturday, and then took the mountain bikes out on Sunday and got out and got some exercise on the coastline. And it's amazing. It's amazing how you can recharge your batteries being out there. And I don't want to get too esoteric about the thing, but I can get a lot of mileage out of spending a few hours just near the coast, sniffing some fresh air, dipping my feet in the
salt air or a lake. Yeah. No hate there.
I am a boat owner. Hasn't been out in a long time. You know what they say about owning boats. I'm sure you guys got one and you're out pretty frequently. But we used to access the lakes, go wakeboarding all the time, whatever else. It was good family time. It's a good time to connect with people. So enough about that. Okay, so growing up in Jersey, I know you're a bit of an athlete. Let's just talk about, kind of what growing up there is like and the transitions into some of the things that you're doing now. But tell me about that. I know you're an athlete.
Yeah. So kind of a lifelong endeavor here. I grew up playing field hockey, played it through college. Um, I guess this is my big outing. I tore my ACL in college, and fast forward, I'm sitting right here with a second time torn ACL. So still an athlete, still rehabbing, but love the grind and the adventure there. Outside of school, I ran a club field hockey company. When I was 19 years old, I had to employ my parents to rent rental cars, which was so funny that I couldn't rent a rental car, but had this business. That transitioned into my more current life. I'm a NCAA field hockey official in addition to working for Pelican. So the fall is a bit nutty, where I have essentially 2 full-time jobs where I sling Pelican during the day. And then typically the schedule is like Friday, Sunday matches. So they'll fly me out to a collegiate institution for the weekend, and I run around with a whistle and take my shiny personality, and hopefully you don't yell at me when you stream or watch a match on TV. Ref lives are fun.
Wow, that's I had no idea. We did not cover that in our brief talk not too long ago. We did talk with you just on is it the same ACL, by the way, or is it a different
ACL.
One? Bummer, dude.
Yeah.
Those are no fun, but it's not death sentence. It's just a thing. They're annoying. I've not had to deal with one personally, but I've dealt with a lot of clients and a lot of customers that have, and generally most of them come back pretty strong if they handle it right. But my point there being, okay, you are traveling. Talk about the schools that you're going to. That's kind of cool. Where do they send you?
Yeah, thanks. So started out as like a high school ref, just bopping around my neighborhood. And then as I advanced, I worked for USA Field Hockey. So they have tournaments all over the country. From there, I slid into the collegiate bracket. So there's like D3 local tournaments. And then essentially you work for different assigners, and they assign for different conferences. So ACC, Big Ten, who else? There's so many in New England. Big East, I think, taps into your California schools like you were talking about before. So it's not uncommon to jump a plane to head west from New Jersey, but they try to kind of bracket it so you get that Friday, Sunday schedule. And then like sometimes I'm sleeping in an airport on Sunday trying to get back to work for Monday.
That's crazy.
School-wise is anywhere in between. It's really, really fun.
Right on. Okay, so I love that. So staying involved in the game and giving back. I think that's important, particularly for women's sports in this country. And I say that as a father who has 2 daughters, a stepdaughter and a biological daughter, and they're both athletes. They both play and compete in different things, and the opportunities beyond college seem to be less, right? And so if you can stay involved, if you love the game and you're able to give back and keep the thing moving for those other young ladies that are out there, I commend you for that. I think that's huge. You see, oftentimes males are what you'll see reffing, and it's good to see females out there on the court, on the field, on the mat, and whatnot, and staying involved and also staying super active, which I know you do. We talked about staying on the water and wakeboarding and stuff like that. Hence the knee. But
it's okay. We'll come back stronger.
Yeah, that's why I love that attitude. Again. So that's again, just a note I wanted to make, just in terms of kind of how busy you stay and you keep your hands and fingers and feet in all kinds of different things. So, okay, so you went away to college to play. I assume you played field hockey in college. What did you study there?
So here's the interesting part. I studied anthropology.
Okay.
So
why?
Why? If you asked, 19-year-old student athlete me, it was because I went on field trips and got me out of the classroom.
Okay.
If you ask my employer what I told my parents when I was 19, that answer was, oh, it's business anthropology. I'm looking at the cultures of what I'm, whatever I was studying that week. So now I'm at like a really cool point in my career where like everything's kind of hitting and it's all coming together. So from a athletic standpoint in field hockey, from my fire department, my little capstone at the end of my undergrad, I did on the firehouse and how culturally it's different within the volunteer service and the paid service. And then also geographically from across the country. So same job, but like, how are you attacking it from within your little organization and what that little organization is in part of the larger. And that kind of fell into the gig that pays me with Pelican is all I do is go on field trips every day. So my silly little 19-year-old dancer has really, really shaped my career and who I am and the lens that I look at professionally and just my own personal mantra.
So that's interesting because, you know, and I hear sociology, anthropology. I think people confuse the two. I'm not sure that they truly understand what those are. Actually, maybe you could define that for us. Like if you explain to somebody like what is anthropology for those people that are maybe a little confused, like I just said, or misunderstood, how would you describe it?
So basic answer is you go on field trips and you look at stuff, which like I know everybody resonates. Everybody loves the 5th grade, class trip to wherever. But the thing it gets most confused with is archaeology, which is you're like brushing off bones somewhere.
Yep.
Anthropology is the more cultural look at it. So early days is like guy went to Papua New Guinea and like looked at the locals, right? Sat on his armchair and says like, wow, we're different than them. Fast forward to 2025. And maybe in a business context is you walk into an organization and, culture, big buzzword, like or you walk into a gym rather, like what's the culture at the gym? Are we, do you vibe there? Do you like you just pick up on subtle nuances and see if like you fit personally or how can you influence this gym to be a better organization?
Yeah, and community. And so I love that because when I look at how, particularly now, I guess just tying this in again to professional career, it's being able to understand the culture and the story behind the culture and being able to fit in to find a solution to whatever their needs or their problem might be, or whatever they're looking to succeed at. And if you studying that is again, so studying that's so important. And for me, I've been a nerd that way. Never, I love my anthropology class, that I took in undergrad myself. And we even did a little bit of it. I remember back in primary school, but the point of that being is I love to study the characters. I love to study the people and kind of understand where they're coming from. It's kind of a little bit of the podcast too, which is hence why I'm asking so many questions. It's an internal intrinsic curiosity that then helps me like try to understand the person or the place or the organization a little bit more and try to ask some questions to dig down a little deeper. And I never had a problem doing that. But what I found is some people had a problem with me doing that. And they you know what I mean? And maybe it's like, why are you asking all these questions? Like as if I had an agenda outside of what I just said, which is like, look, man, I just want to understand. And I think people think they understand a lot more than they do in a lot of cases because they don't take time to sort of step back. And the thing I use, the thing I've said, and it's worked for me very well over my years, and I used to teach coaches and people in the business would be, look, learn how to question skillfully and listen carefully, because it will set you up for a lot of success, both in whatever it is you're trying, your specific goal is, but it'll also help your customer or your client or your relationship or whatever else do that. So I think that's an interesting tie-in. I want to come back to that and talk about Pelican in a little bit. But let's talk about this transition into the fire service. Sure. Because that's interesting. How did this come up?
All right. So I am an only child, and I joke with my dad that I'm his favorite son. But when I turned 16, joined the fire service. So I started my fire career at 16 years old as a junior firefighter. And not all departments have this. Sometimes they'll call it like explorer. Sometimes they'll call it junior firefighter or like some sort of lead in. But my little town and like I mentioned before, outside of New York City has this incredible legacy of junior firefighters, most often being a second generation or third generation, but it's the feeder program to help fill out our roles as senior firefighters full time.
Got it. So this goes through high school. So you do this in high school. Does this continue in college, or while you're busy playing field hockey and being a student? Because I heard grad school in there too. So
grad school's way down the line, but I did all of the training, and this was the time I'd have to double check the standards within where you live, but in New Jersey, 20 years ago, I did all of the fire school training with exception to like the tough stuff. So like the live burns and stuff that would not be appropriate for a 16-year-old child to go into. I did that once I turned 18, but I did all the class work. I did all of the physical evaluations with exception to like the real life hazard stuff when I was a kid.
Well, that's interesting. Okay. So you have this in your back pocket and you go through college, right? And you come out, so field hockey is cut short because of the knee, right? And so then you go into grad school. What was the goal with the anthropology degree or the studying of that coming out? Did you have something particular in mind and then things changed for you? Talk about that.
So grad school is 15 years later. I just finished that this month.
Oh, congrats.
Thanks.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's well done. Well done. Seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and finally getting there.
No more. We're chilling for the moment. But back then, I hurt my knee playing sport. I started a club field hockey team. So I'm 19 years old, taking 17-year-old kids and doing like college showcases. So I don't know if your dad life has put you on the soccer pitch, trying to get in front of these illustrious college coaches. I didn't have all the tech and like recruiting videos back then. I think somebody was like hand scaling the highlight reel. But I took these kids and I ran this business at 19 years old. So that was my job. I was self-employed entrepreneur lady boss at 19. That was in concurrent. I worked for Microsoft at the same time. So we've always been a little bit high functioning crazy. And Microsoft led into working for Pelican. So I went from super high tech, but teaching people how to use Windows phones and Xboxes, which was really fun, into Pelican, which was not so high tech, but it is on the backside. But that was kind of the first chunk of my crazy 20-something career. Business owner, tech turns to Pelican.
Got you. Okay.
That was a lot.
Sort of, but I love like the high functioning crazy part because I can see like the wanting to be involved in something and then just going headfirst into it, full crazy, into something. So, before we get to Pelican, let's talk about the fire service because I want to dig into this more because I don't really understand the volunteer side of this. Obviously, I've seen the volunteer fire department on the sides of lots of buildings as I'm driving through little towns across America, and I do travel a bit and I get out there, and my impression of this is. There's a couple folks in town that, want to serve their community, maybe have some skills. They grew up there. Maybe they had a friend or a family member that was involved in this, and they know that there's a need, for this because when bad things happen, there has to be somebody there that has, a skill set and some accessibility to equipment to help them. But I always wondered how that kind of worked because again, it says volunteer. What does that really mean? And then what kind of support, resources, training do these folks get? And how prepared are they really for when things go down? And then from there, like what other resources are available to them outside of that? Like as an example, there's a lot of part-time, like I talked to a lot of law enforcement people. So most special operations teams or SWAT teams, if you want to call it that, or even other duties within the agency are part-time or maybe full-time roles while they're doing something else. So, you're a full-time patrol, but you're also on the SWAT team, quote unquote, part-time. And that's a very broad statement, right? Depending on kind of the things that are happening. And it's folks like you that, again, are high achievers that are wanting to give back, that are wanting to be of service or wanting to do something a little bit more, a little different. They're jumping into these roles. So getting back to volunteer firefighting, you had a bunch of training going into this, right? So talk about the structure there. And again, going back to the anthropology piece, talk about the culture there. You mentioned it's pretty rich in where you live. I just wonder, what can you tell me about this whole thing? Because I'd like to understand it, and I'd like to maybe, if you can, be a voice for some of those volunteers that are out there, and or encourage people to get involved because I know there's a need. So, what can you tell me about it?
Absolutely. So, I think it's such a broad topic to truncate into our conversation. However long we talk, I could talk forever about it. But if I had to boil it down to one word, it would be community. So it's the brotherhood. It's, adjacent to LE stuff, law enforcement. Like, I can pick my phone up or walk down the street, and do I need a tradesman? I have somebody to help sheetrock. Do I need to have someone help with childcare? You've got a babysitter built in. It like brings you back to your roots of just, I think, what we all should achieve to kind of be a community and
giving back.
Yeah, and giving back. So that's word number one. We will take anyone, and there is a place within the community of the fire service, whether it's paid or volunteer, for everyone. I am not your stereotype, right? I am 5'4". I'm tiny. However, I can talk to you all day about building construction and how a building is constructed and how it will burn down, essentially. And, why should I know that information? It kind of leads into a paramilitary type equivalent there, where like we have structure and rank, and it's a beautiful thing to kind of have that all within one entity. And then there's the family component as well. So you've got the tactical job and like the skills that you learn in fire school and on the job. Everything you learn in like your fire one is like your basics or
Sure.
boot camp. You have that, and then you have your on the job skills once you get back to your firehouse, and like you learn how it really all works and what makes sense. Yes. As long as you just have an inkling of a call to serve, it doesn't have to be this robust thing. It's the fire service will teach you. And kind
Got
of
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you, because again, volunteer, that would also mean there has to be time to be able to spend there. And it's interesting what you said. There was a couple of things I heard you say, like, somebody that may be in the trades, or somebody that's involved in helping other families with their kids while their families go off to work, maybe at the trades. And there's, it's sort of an inner circle, and it's people that are serving other people in their communities and let's just say providing value to them locally. And I think that's really important. Like, I live in the Silicon Valley, and there is not a strong sense of community here. And I think there was at one point, but, with tech is global, right? And the things that you're doing, that a lot of these folks do, are invisible to everybody else. I mean, we're using platforms, we're using softwares, we're using, technology to get through our daily lives and run our businesses and communicate with our families and post social things and, send pictures back and forth and whatever else. And that is important in keeping people connected. But I always ask myself, like, what are you really doing to contribute to society? What are you doing to give back? And where do those dollars go? And how are they being exchanged in the community that you live in? And what are you really invested in? And so when I say there's not a strong sense of community, there's not a strong sense of investment in the people that they live near and around, like your neighbor. I remember, shocking to me, it was when I was old enough to kind of remember or to kind of realize what was going on. I was born and raised primarily in California. For a short period of time, for about 4 years, I lived in the state of Utah as when I was very young, 5 to 8. Then at 5 to 7, 5 to 8, moved to Delaware. I lived on the East Coast for about a year and then moved back to California. So, and here's my experience moving to Delaware on the East Coast. When we moved in, we had people banging down our door with the moving truck outside, bringing us food, bringing us, hey, what can we do for you? Introducing themselves. Hey, I live here. If you ever need anything, here's my phone number, because there were no cell phones or digital stuff back then. Like, hey, we're having a get together at this particular day and time. You should come by, meet the people. Let's throw a party for you. Welcome to the neighborhood. And to me, like, that was my first experience with that. I didn't really know any better. And, of course, my parents were like wanting to be social and be involved and know their neighbors. So we did all that stuff. There was a community pool. We went down to the pool. There's like a cabana club type thing. Man, everybody went to that pool and everybody hung out and talked. And I say all that to say is it was a very cool experience for me. And I remember it vividly. Then we moved back to California. I swear, we didn't even know who our neighbors were for like the first year. It was very closed off. And that's not to say, and one neighbor was a law enforcement officer, and that's the one we met first. And I think it was more him wanting to know who was living next door to him. Very good family. It was awesome, but we didn't really have a tight relationship. But the house beyond that, and on right or left, as we got older, like I didn't know those people. There wasn't really that strong sense of community, and where we found that community was in the church, through sports as kids, as we got involved in playing inside the community and the other communities around us, and we developed these relationships, but it wasn't really tight. And now, flash forward, 30, 40 years, it's gotten even more disconnected. And so when I think about like where you're growing up and, long time, and there's a lot of, let's just say there's a lot of, let me make sure I phrase this right. There's a lot of transplants that are here in the Silicon Valley. People from all over the world that come from different communities and different cultures, going back to that word. And while people will say it's very diverse, it is, but it isn't. Yes, phenotypically, culturally, you'll find some diversity, but that stays very local to them, and it doesn't spread out. And so when I go back to the giving back to the community, it's this long-term relationship and connection to making sure that the people around you are taken care of. And if I need something, it's okay for me to ask, and I expect that they're going to do the same in return. And so when I think of volunteer firefighting and you talk about the community, I think that makes sense to me, that you've got people that have a stronghold in their community, and they really feel bonded or connected to it. And so that they want to be there for people, and they recognize that there's a need, and they don't necessarily want somebody else coming in to do that for them, because who better to take care of your family than your own family? So I think that's cool. I think, and again, I think it's probably misunderstood by people that live in major, cities with major agencies and major departments. They just make the phone call, and the people show up in the red trucks, with the red lights on them, and do the job.
Yeah.
Whether it's an ambulance or a fire truck or engine or whatever else. I'm kind of going off here, and this is just my trying to make a connection to this. So what is life like as a volunteer firefighter? Like, talk about the calls, or talk about where you're getting involved. I mean, I don't know. Is there major disaster relief stuff you've been involved in? What can you tell us about your experience there?
Yeah. So, I mean, you asked me about my, how I got started. I live in a New York City suburb, so I watched the Twin Towers fall, like from my schoolyard. So we've got some serious stuff going on. From there, it's kind of shaped our call volume within my district. We have a lot of highway, so we have a lot of rescue work. So a lot of extrications from that, and like silly stuff too. I rescued a cat out of a tree. Call that a PR.
Literally did that.
Yeah, literally did that. Put like the stick up. I didn't personally do it. I'm a little more humble. We sent like a younger guy, but smiled for the photo op with the cat.
Gotcha.
So everything in between. I think from where I am at in my career, it's not about going now. I'm not a chief or any sort of officer, but it's like the analytical thinking of how to fix this situation that we have. So it's not always brute force. I do a lot with an organization called Man vs. Machine Training. So it's extrication that's not like getting someone out of a car. It's your wedding ring is stuck on your hand. How can we safely remove the wedding ring from your hand without like taking a finger off? So it's not always like, a big chisel and trying to do it. So creative, innovative solutions to prioritize people more safely. And it's not always putting out fires.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to that, and I think like with all the things that, the fire service has to do, when you think about the full-time side of this and how busy they are doing so many different things, depending on the community that you're living in, or, the size of your city or county or whatever else. I mean, we're busy. I mean, and we talk about sort of problems that need to be fixed. I think there's a shortage for a lot of reasons for first responders, and particularly firefighters, and getting the right folks into those positions. And that trickles over as, law enforcement is being stretched right now with regard to total numbers and the quality of what's going out there. It's had to been, the pipeline has been sped up. Standards have changed in order to put butts in the seats, for lack of a better term, and that puts a strain on all those services for your community. So, kind of what you were talking about there, I see that as like, hey, we have these volunteer firefighters and they are capable, but where can we give them work that can take some of the strain off of, some of the more, I guess, dynamic calls where, we're out there having to fight major fires or whatever else that's out there. Do you guys get out to firework, and how does that look? Are you kind of called in adjunctly when things get out of control, or are you a primary service provider when stuff happens in town?
Yeah, so we're primary. So run a show for a fire call. You get we used to have a pager, right? That would tone you out.
Yeah.
But you're at your kid's soccer match, you're at home. I'm fortunate enough for Pelican, I work from home, so I can respond pretty quickly to an incident. But you hop in the car. When I was a kid, I used to hop on my bike or run if I was like feeling super fit. That was like a whole thing. You throw on your turnout gear. On average, less than 60 seconds to be out the door once you walk in. But then our response, we roll from there. So there's a whole lot of research into like the adrenaline spikes and cardiac issues. That's the number one killer in firefighters, next to the big C word. But
the C word, yeah.
Having that resting heart rate going through the roof, just with adrenaline spikes to get out the door. So you don't know what you could be responding to. It could be a carbon monoxide false alarm. It could be a ripping, 3-alarm blaze where you got to get to work right away.
So you're basically riding around with all your gear in your trunk, right? And
so
you must have a station you're reporting to obviously grab all the things that you need.
So my department, I keep my gear at the fire station. I'm super lucky that we have the square footage for that. A lot of rural fire departments keep it in the back of their truck. So unfortunately, I mentioned cancer, but you're throwing your gear, and this is another educational point for firefighters right now. You're throwing the gear in the back of your truck. I grew up as a kid in the backseat of my dad's Chief truck. And I would take the soot and stuff and be like, oh, eye black. This is fun. It's not cute.
Right.
It's so important. And here's where my professional life is kind of exciting. I get to help shape the way we change stuff. So I like to sell a gearbox, a Pelican case, where you keep all your turnout gear self-contained, and then you can decon the gear. You can decon the Pelican case. I'm sure you guys are familiar with. You just kind of wash it out, throw some Simple Green, get rid of it, and you are living just a bit more cleaner. So that's the ugly side of firefighting. I think the benefits of having a career department, sometimes you have gear washers in the fire station. Since that infrastructure is not quite there for all of these more rural departments, it's so important to make sure you keep that stuff clean. And that's just not me, the female firefighter who's like, oh, let's clean it. It's vital.
Yeah. Again, solving problems. So, benefits of being a volunteer firefighter. Obviously, you get to give back to the community. You get involved in maybe some exciting stuff, maybe some not so exciting stuff. Mm-hmm. There's ability for you to get out there and educate your community, both inside the profession, but also outside the profession, on things to know and how to be safer, how to be cleaner, how to deal with certain things. I wonder about just like the downsides. When I say downsides, just maybe more of, here's the realities and here are the challenges that exist. What are some of those?
Oh gosh. Well, first would be mental health advocacy and awareness. Second is budget and manpower. So actually both of them, I think the best thing you can do is just chat about it and be there and really show up for people, which speaks to our first point of community and not being the absent next door neighbor. I think the reason I'm so successful with my job is I just show up just like you, just to have a conversation. My authenticity, if I'm here speaking to you or here speaking to a customer, you're there for people. And I think that's the best thing you can grow a volunteer organization is your passion and exuberance and excitement for stuff. I've been doing this 20 years and I'm still pretty excitable about it. And I think that really shines through to attract more people.
So do you have, are there, again, talk about like major agencies, county and city agencies that do have some level of resources, some good, some not so good with regard to handling the mental health, emotional health side of things. Are those afforded to you, through the city or the county, or is that on you? How does that work?
Yes. There's some other good organizations out there. I know we spoke briefly on tech. There's an organization called Next Rung, and it's not limited to just your municipality and what they offer, right? Like reach out. But I think, lean on a friend. I think that's the easiest way to start.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you in all the conversations that I've had. I think people just need to be okay talking about with somebody that they know that can understand what they're talking. They don't necessarily need a clinician all the time. Sometimes that is really important, but in order to get to that step, like having the ability just to talk with somebody and know that that person understands you and can, sometimes it's just getting it off your chest, and not doing that with, your significant other across the dinner table or whatever, but with somebody that's on the inside that understands you. And sometimes it means taking the next step. I think, I also think about this. I'm like, it's volunteer. So you're not collecting a paycheck for this. And it does take time and you have to be willing to give that time. I wonder about the downsides of that and what volunteer firefighters get in terms of resources versus, again, a full-time position at a larger agency.
Yeah. I don't want to get too serious here, and I don't want to link the two, but a bourbon and cigar also goes a long way if you're hanging out. So
going back to the health side.
Yeah. I mean, not that I endorse either, but sometimes.
I absolutely do. As for the reasons you just said, I absolutely do. So you won't, I will.
Yeah. All right. Fair. We'll meet then.
Yeah. So, what about like the paycheck side of things? Sounds like the paycheck is more or less just, that internal satisfaction of I was here, I helped somebody today. I'll go back to my job and I'll know I did a good thing and that's good enough for me. But what about on the compensation side, on the retirement side, on the health benefits side? I mean, all the things that are important for somebody that is giving at some level and sacrificing at some level. How does that work out?
Yeah, so not a ton. If I were to be injured at the workplace, my municipality would support me within that. But I have no healthcare in regards to volunteer firefighting. I have no compensation. I get a small stipend for like clothing allowance, but that's it. And I just go home with a big warm heart, which I know is not a crazy selling point for most, but you gotta trust to give back a little bit.
So I think, I listen to that and I think, people get into the fire service for different reasons. And a lot of it has to do with legacy, right? And family. And you mentioned a little bit of that at the beginning. My dad was a firefighter. My grandfather was a firefighter or a police officer or whatever else. And I knew I needed to be involved in a life of service. And yes, there's good retirement benefits attached to that a lot of times, medical care, things like that. But primarily people get into it, I think, because at least at some point when they start, because they want to serve, right? And they want to give back and they want to be a part of their community and do something bigger than them. But it's different when you're collecting a paycheck versus when you're not. And also when you're collecting a paycheck, then you are, at some level, there's a burden of, well, this is what you signed up for. So if we're asking you to do more, you're going to do more, right? So there's more overtime, whether that means you have to miss your kid's birthday party or whatever else. I wonder how that transitions over into the volunteer side and what, I guess what challenges might exist with that manpower on that. Because let's just say you mentioned the sheetrock guy, right? Or sheetrock person, the person's hanging sheetrock. They got a job to do, right? That's what puts food on their table at the end of the day. Do you ever run into issues with folks that are just like, look, I know I'm on this team, but I cannot do this right now. I've got to put food on my table, and what impacts that may or may not have had on services that you're able to provide? Like, what are the realities there?
Yeah, it's a very real reality. And specifically within my district, just outside of New York City, our population has changed of who our firefighters are. Back in the day, it was the guy that was the auto mechanic who could leave the shop for a minute, run to the call, and come back. Now where I live, it's a lot of New York City transplants, right? You are a day trader. You're in Manhattan all day long, but you reside in New Jersey because Manhattan real estate is, just like
Ridiculous.
California. It's insane.
Yep.
So that person is not specifically there from, let's say, 9 to 5 or 7 to 5. It's very real. And I think whether you're looking at law enforcement or you're looking at the fire service or any job really, is how can you do more with less, and how can you deploy the correct personnel that you have? Maybe that guy, will call him Tony. Maybe Tony comes home at 5 o'clock and he is relentless. But that said, Tony needs to draw his own boundaries and make sure that he and his are taken care of. So it's a delicate balance. And you just gotta make.
So going back to like the recruitment side of things, how does that work, or how does that change? I mean, you got involved very, very, very young, right? And 16 years old is very early to be getting this. I know there's police explorer programs and things in the fire service that allow for this. But it also means, like, if you're doing that, you have to be able to afford to live in the community that you grew up in, and maybe we're part of this program. And I think what I'm hearing you maybe say underneath that is that's becoming maybe more difficult for people to do. I can imagine, people that are coming out with a little bit more net worth of the bigger city and moving to the smaller city. It's also driving up cost of homes, prices of things, just like it is in anywhere else in the country that's a beautiful place to live, but is also close enough to access the major metro areas. How is that impacting sort of recruitment and what you're seeing coming on from a volunteer perspective, or maybe even your outside perspective, looking at some of the other services that, services that get provided by cities in that you live in?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. The type of person that lives in my community has changed drastically just in my lifetime. And I don't mean to be an old person and be like, hey, when I was a kid, it was the good old days. But again, you have to be able to staff with what you have. So from a fundraising standpoint, which is super important, and also a recruitment and retention, we've changed our tactic in just making stuff more fun. Like, who now lives in town that we can take you and train you? I think that's the beauty of it, right? Like, you don't have to know how to sheetrock before. This is a terrible example because sheetrocking is so hard, but you don't have to know how to be the firefighter. You just have to take the person and teach them how to be it. So you just gotta ebb and flow with the times.
I get that. And I think that's what everybody's challenged and struggling to do right now. And it's just changed, and people have to figure out how to combat and navigate through that. Talk about the kids, like the youth there now versus maybe when you were growing up, and kind of, again, with this kind of cultural change in a sense, like from a professional cultural change. You talk about the sports, right? And obviously the programs there that exist is it the same? Is it different? Like, what's going on there, and kind of with what you're seeing? And I guess I should also ask this: Are you involved in that training process for these folks at all, as from a volunteer perspective?
Yeah, so it's so cool to see. We've been watching this one kid grow up. He's also a legacy, but legacy also attracts some friends along the peripheral, right?
Yep.
So one homie brings 3 more homies, and then you kind of get that little class together. So it's not dead. That sort of tenacity and call to service is there. I just ask that they tell a friend or 2 to come with. Got
it. Yeah. I mean, you've been around, when I say kids, I mean that respectfully, just the youth, again, through athletes and sports. Is it changed in terms of the way you have to communicate with them, or the things you got to say? Like, I heard you say, like, we're trying to make it a little bit more fun, to make it a little bit more attractive in cases. Like, what other shifts have you seen?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, tech is a big part. So professionally with my Pelican products, that's how I communicate with customers. So I have a very business to business approach. I sell to dealer networks and like kind of old school business, but I started like a silly Instagram page on the side, and my side project has taken over like how I communicate with my customers. That said, with the fire department, I run all like their social channels and stuff. We did Fire Prevention Week this fall, and we had the librarian and cute little kids to do, stop, drop, and roll and fire prevention. We had a silly video on TikTok. I don't even know how to TikTok, but now we're changing how we communicate with our audiences and making it more approachable and fun. And there will be no singing or dancing numbers. It's just creatively, how do you communicate the same old information and package it in a way that's fun and relevant versus, like a stop, drop, and roll poster you hang up in the bathroom stall.
Right. Because that's interesting. Okay. So speaking of old people, I remember in elementary, right, in primary school, coming up, and less in high school, but we always, we did the fire drills and stuff like that. But we were educated on this stuff in school. Like we were taught, and oftentimes they'd have the fire department roll up, in the engine, and that was really cool because we got to climb on the truck and put on the heavy turnouts and the helmets and things like that. And there was a connection to it. I have to tell you, so I have a 13-year-old stepdaughter who hasn't really had that experience. The one experience we were able to have was a good friend of mine works for a major agency here in the state, and they were local to us. Their station was local to us. A little bit of a rural area, and we were having dinner as a family one night, and they were cruising through. They were run to the grocery store, which was kind of near. We were at my folks' place, and they were kind of near us, and I had been texting him while he was riding over or whatever. He was asking about a coffee shop. He said, "Where's a good place to get coffee?" or whatever it was. And I go, "Oh, go here or whatever." And I go, "What are you guys doing right now?" He goes, "Oh, we're rolling through here." I go, "Dude, just pull off the street right here real quick and come through and say hi. Let me introduce you to my folks or whatever on their way back to the firehouse." And she was able to go out there. Callie was able to go out there, climb on the truck, kind of see around, kind of fiddle around with it. And that was her one experience with that. And had I not had that relationship, I don't think she would have gotten that. And I think so. Going back to the social media piece and you handling the social channels, I think that's a thing that the community service officers that are out there, be it fire or LEO, are really struggling with right now. Like how do we craft this message to show people how the sausage is made to some extent? Like, this is what we do. This is what we're out here doing. And at the same time, show that we're here for the community, but also the realities of the job and what we're actually doing in the community. And that then gets, and these agencies are starting to recognize this is really important. Like, we have to be involved. We have to be telling our story somehow. And it can't just be like what happened on the 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock, or whatever news, about this incident where you get a 2-minute clip of, a bunch of trucks out there. And it's like, oh, well, that's what we expect firefighters to do. That's what they do. They go out and they fight fire. And that didn't happen in my neighborhood. So thankfully that didn't happen. But that's really dramatic. And that's kind of what the news feed looks like for like firefighters or law enforcement officers. So you're seeing somebody get assigned the job of telling the story of the agency from the social perspective. Like, what are we going to be posting on? We need to have a TikTok. We need to have an Instagram. And it's usually handed off to the person that, number one, wants to do it. And number two, has a passion for doing it. But I know this because I've talked to people that they're not getting a lot of direction and they're not necessarily getting a lot of support. And there isn't a marketing department around all of this to put together a storyboard and what story are we trying to tell and how are we going to try and tell it and whatever else. It's just kind of thrown together in cases is what it looks like. That's my perception. And whether that's the message that the agency wants to be sending or not, they have other things going on and they're just dependent on this one person right in there to make sure they're in the right place at the right time to tell the right story. I wonder how that is for you. Like, what kind of support are you getting? Like, how do you approach this as that person behind the social media for your department?
I'm sorry to be preaching the community word, but can I give you a long-winded answer?
Please go on. Yeah, go as long as you want.
To community. All right. So just to show you how my life and career and volunteer firefighting is so intertwined. I had a fire call a couple winters ago. Terrible winter. We had nor'easters and snow dumping, and I almost died through a gas explosion emergency, which has led me to a product development. I'm going to try to smush this all into a neat little package here at Pelican. We have two different kinds of flashlights. We have a performance flashlight that's really bright. I typically sell it to law enforcement. And then we have an intrinsically safe model that are typically kind of positioned one or the other, where the intrinsically safe model will not be the spark or ignition source around gas emergencies. The fire service as a whole does not typically have a standard operating procedure around gas emergencies. You just have a flashlight. Maybe your Motorola mic is intrinsically safe, and maybe you know what intrinsically safe is. That's a super cool word. But a lot of time I deal with corporations and manufacturers who just like have buzzwords, and the marketing is so disjointed from, like you're saying, within the fire service. It's just like a dude with a phone being like, oh, shoot, we need to like put some content up.
Yep.
So I have gone on a personal mission to make sure that every firefighter I sell a flashlight to has an intrinsically safe flashlight on their being, because I want to make sure that I don't be the source of this. And this is through my own experience of, flames coming and a manhole cover almost landing on my head while I was following every bit of procedure.
Wait, talk about this a little bit. I mean, I think I understand, like
Sure.
you're talking about ignition sources and things like that, but put this together for us a little bit. I'm not trying to sensationalize your story. I just want to understand it better. Like, what happened?
Yeah. So there were wires down. So external wires arcing, big flame, pretty to look at. Newscaster came to film it because nothing else was going on. It's the Northeast. So we've got aging infrastructure, right? So a 30-inch gas main, subgrade. It was leaking because it's 30 years old. And we were in the process of evacuating the entire neighborhood, right? Knock, knock, knock. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like, can we get you out of here?
Time to go. Yep.
Time to go. Thank God that gas main did not explode. What ended up happening was a perpendicular sewer line within that 30-inch gas main. Those sewer gases superheated from the burning wires above ground on top. And that caused the sewer manhole covers to explode 30 feet in the air.
Okay.
I didn't hear, after the explosion, I didn't hear them land. That's how far and loud that projectile was. My flashlight it was not the cause of it. I want to just make sure that everything on my person as a firefighter is safe and secure, that will not put me in harm's way.
Got it.
So now we have a flashlight, right? Pelican makes this flashlight. It's my duty to help make sure that I can share my story of this silly little sewer gas explosion, which almost took me out, to make sure that everything on every firefighter that I come into contact. Segue, I've taken multiple gas emergency trainings later. My video of this is in their training material.
So I think what I heard you say there is, in terms of policy or procedure around this kind of thing, there isn't, it's not in doctrine. There's no doctrine on this.
Nope.
What does that mean? It's different per agency. There could be some, there could be none. It could be really involved and be really good. Could probably be really involved and be not so good. Mm-hmm. Is that what I'm picking up?
Exactly. So let me land the plane back to your original marketing question. I work with our Pelican marketing team to make sure that this is relevant to our firefighters, to make sure we're creating a story around all of this. So it's not just some guy sitting around saying, hey, here's our campaign for August. It's purpose-driven. Here's my experience. And the beautiful part about Pelican is I speak to all of these different people from all over the map. We touch every industry. It's like so cool. And I just receive all of these stories, right? Which is my little community. And then that's how real person, real results. Here's how we keep us safer. And that's my marketing lens.
I love that. So that is very organized. It's very well thought, right? And it makes sense because you are still providing service to the entire community, right? And you're using experience, your competency, both culturally and professionally, to come up with that, versus being thrown into the mix like, hey, we need some cool photo ops, of what's going on out there with the kissing hands and shaking babies thing, that exists out there.
So my advice to your earlier question is just really lean into like the cool shit that you do on a daily basis and the why behind stuff. So like we're all crazy people, right? Like we have the why behind we do stuff most of the time, right? In our business and personal life. Just explain those little moments, and maybe don't take 10 minutes explaining how you almost died by a sewer cap, but
I understand.
Take those small vignettes of life and explain that, and it translates much more relatable on your stupid little screen.
Yeah, I get you. Okay, so there's a lot of crossover obviously there with Pelican. I want to talk about this. So here's my experience with Pelican. They have been completely integrated into my life for a lot of years now, and whether that's transporting my podcast equipment I've got. So regularly I travel with several Pelicans, and so we got connected probably a month ago, just in person, and we were talking about it. And I actually hadn't run through it to how many Pelican products I actually have in my life and how dependent I am. I am on them to protect my investments and get me to wherever I'm going from point A to point Z, because a lot of times there's many, many points in between there. So I kind of went through my list, and I mean, I've got everything. So I travel, if I'm traveling with firearms and I'm traveling with my podcast kit, I have got two fairly large. This is relative because Pelican makes a lot of different things. I should ask this. Do you even know how many SKUs you guys have?
The day I learned the price to everything and how many SKUs, I quit. Like, we have so many. It's insane. So a lot.
Yeah, there is a ton. So I have two 1750 cases, right, which I can get all of my kit, firearms, gear, ammo, whatever I happen to be traveling with into, more or less, with some clothing, that I might be using for that event or that training or wherever it is that I'm doing. And then I have this other one where I can basically get all of my sound equipment, light equipment, and like tripods and cabling and all that kind of stuff that I take on the road with me in the other. So when I show up to the airport, I've got these two massive, massive cases. But I also have a smaller one, and I think it's a 1500 series. I could be wrong about this. I can't keep all the numbers straight going back to how many SKUs you have, where I keep my cameras and my soundboard in. And that's where I put in all my SD cards, because once I have those, they don't go out of my sight, because I can't recreate a podcast if they get lost or whatever. So they go into that. And that goes on the plane with me. That gets carried on with me. So it's a carry-on size. And then I also have like another little external Pelican case for my SD cards, for my micros and my basic SD cards, and I have that. I've got rifle cases at home that I've traveled with that I use for long guns that can't be broken down, like bolt guns that can't be broken, that are not easily broken down, to put into a to put into a case. I've got like another one I carry. You mentioned this before, that I carry. It's a perfect size cigar box. Do you know that? What's that one? It's the Tac something, or what is that thing called?
Oh, it's a Texas company. They make sticks. Yeah. So it's our cases. I can send you.
That's what I have. No, yeah. I have that one. Yeah, I have that one. It's a perfect little humidor.
Are the guys out of Texas?
No, I can't remember which one it is. It's a Pelican case, and it's got like a little shelf in there. I drop my cigars in there, and I can put like a Boveda packet in there to keep things in my lighter, my cutter, my punch fits in there. Yep. Yeah, everything goes in there. Like, and so I started to go through this and go, shit, Pelicans everywhere. I don't think I go anywhere without any Pelican products. And the reason why, number one, was that's just what I saw everybody else doing. Right? Like all the professional people that travel with expensive gear or equipment that are trying to protect their investments use Pelicans. They've been around forever. I've seen them forever. I want to talk a little bit about the history. So I was just like, this is just where I go to. Now I know there's other brands out there that do stuff. I just don't know another one that when I walk into the airport, I see these things being drugged through the airport by a lot of different people, and the outsides of these things are just beat to shit. Mm-hmm. And the reason they're beat to shit is because they're being handled by however they're being handled, once they go on airplanes and things like that. And despite how bad it looks on the inside, obviously they're being used frequently because it protects the stuff on the inside. And that's not a sales pitch. It's just like, that's kind of my introduction. I need something to protect all my gear. And so I went to Pelican, not knowing a ton about the company right from the get-go. I was just like, I don't care. I don't really care where this is made, who's making it right now. I just know I need to have my stuff. But I've learned some things about Pelican, and maybe you can fill people in on the company itself and kind of where it started, the origin story, and how it's evolved and where it is now, because it's a massive company. I didn't realize how big it actually is. Maybe you can talk through it.
Yeah. So we're giant, but humble and nimble, and it's a really exciting time to be part of Pelican. But we're just coming up on our 50th anniversary.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like, hey, startup plus 49. We are manufactured in Torrance, California, and also South Deerfield, Massachusetts. So all domestic made cases. Our origin story is pretty cool. Our founder's name was Dave Parker. He's since passed away, but he was just a dude who was a diver in Southern California. Like, what's up? I feel like I relate to that. I never had the opportunity to meet him, but I grew up on the water. Mm-hmm. And he would scuba dive and float away from his boat. So he took his son's hockey stick, cut it up, put some sort of buoyant floaty thing in the middle, and would tether himself to it. So he would be like almost like a crab pot up top, right? So you could see where the divers were. And that was product one. I've sold a ton of those. It's an awesome legacy product. And from that, he started going to dive shows and started making first aid kits. So that was product two. So he stuffed all the Band-Aids and people were like, hey, like your Band-Aids kind of suck, but we really like this waterproof box. Yeah. This guy was doing this all from his garage in Southern California, and it's scaled from there. And we are now worldwide. Gosh, I don't even know how many employees we have. It's crazy, but it is so cool to work for a US based manufacturing company where we're all here.
Right. I love that. Very cool story. I did read a little bit about the story and the scuba diving thing. And when I think about that 50 years ago, I didn't realize it was that long ago, but 50 years ago and now, and how many products exist out there based on that same premise, right? Like you're not going out there unless you're on a boat, right? Like, and that boat's being manned and they're looking out for the divers that are underneath. And, the flag goes up, we got divers in the water or whatever else. Like if you're out there are a ton of products out there that basically came from this product. Watertight, right? Durable, and all the things. Again, interesting about the first aid kit. And there's the other thing about Pelican. Pelican does a lot of things for a lot of people. And this is what I realized, like, I don't really know what I need. I just need something to put it in. And I think one of the cool things about it is that you can customize these things in whatever way you want. And again, I'm preaching to the choir for anybody that uses it, but whatever you want, whatever you need it for, you can make a Pelican fit your stuff. And obviously there's inserts and things you can put in there. And I have a few of those, particularly for my cameras and my soundboard when I travel. You can customize it and whatever else. But I think that's interesting, going back to the first aid kits, like, hey, we really like your box, but this first aid kit sucks. Yeah. Like, so you're not trying to do that, right? You're trying to do, like, we'll give you the case, you can build it however you want, and we have some stuff for you to be able to do that. But going back to the innovation part and all the different people you work with, and the different applications that they're using these products for, we did have a brief discussion about this and some of the cool stuff that's out there. And again, my scope or my lens on this is pretty narrow. I just kind of, I see what other people are dragging around ranges and into shows and things like that. But you are involved from the sales side with all kinds of people worldwide that do all kinds of stuff. Maybe talk about that a little bit and give people some perspective on the broad sense of what Pelican services.
Yeah. So it's all over the map. And going back to like who I am as a person, like every day is a field trip for me, whether I'm like the 19-year-old anthropology student making up an answer of why I'm in college to now. So I've spoken to people who take our cases to summit Mount Everest. Like they're literally dragging cases up there. Mm-hmm. They have been to not quite the moon, but we are so involved in like space exploration. So like that's one end. If you need an expensive diamond to be transported, we're keeping like high-end jewelry. NFL. So all of our tech equipment, we are, in stadiums across the world. Blending back to kind of my personality, like on range is one thing. Like, what kit are you bringing? Are you going hog hunting for the weekend in Texas from a helicopter? Like, I got you. We can kit that out. Scopes, night vision, like got it all. Back to sports. I have a company who is monitoring athletes who are wearing like GPS trackable items. Yep. That's on the player. All of the stats and all of the carts for technology is not just like, the 1510 that you're bringing on the case or bringing on the plane rather for your travel. We are building massive tech carts to wheel out that need like big wheels to make sure that we can go over the turf.
The terrain, yeah.
From stadium to stadium. So like from a nerdy personal standpoint, like bring me to trivia when we going out. Like I feel like I can just personally rattle off the craziest stuff. But Pelican has been there to support every athlete, every adventurer. We have such a cool front seat. And this is not me drinking the company Kool-Aid. The folks that I have met through this job are amazing. Hands down. And like, that's you. It's just so fun.
It's the regular dude to the professional athlete to the professional adventurer or amateur or whatever else. Like, again, interesting thing. So just with regard to your position, what is the actual title? What actually is the title? Like, do you guys do those things? I imagine you have to. It's a massive company. There has to be some structure here.
We are a massive company, and my team, I think they love to hate me because I do so many roles. But on paper, I am a regional sales manager for the Northeast. But from that, I kind of bleed into marketing. I kind of bleed into sales. I kind of bleed into tech and e-com. But day in, day out, the paycheck comes from selling like OEM manufacturers. So like a firearms manufacturer or a drone manufacturer, the cases in mass find their way to you as the consumer.
So you're out there talking to people all the time. I know you're at shows, you're doing all kinds of different things, all over the place. I wonder about the innovation part and your involvement at all, just in, obviously you're talking to people. I would assume like this is the way I pictured in my head. There's a booth, there's the Pelican booth, right? We got some stuff going on here at this show in whatever industry it might be. And there's somebody out there that's got a product or starting a product and knows they need something to house this thing in or transport it in or whatever. And so they're talking to you and you're sort of that first person they're having that conversation with. How does that process go from you back to, to R&D to whatever, and how much involvement do you get to have in there? And the follow-up question to that is like, what's the coolest thing you've seen done so far that you can talk about? Because I imagine there's a lot of NDAs going back to specific products and companies and things like that.
Yeah, the coolest. I got to think on that for a second. But my job is how can I customize this Pelican case through Pelican to achieve your mission? So do you have an expensive piece of technology? Do you have an idea that you need to keep safe within your Pelican? I want to modify it to achieve that. So think about a rig for camera and lights. Do we need to machine out a handle? Do we need to machine out a port? I just did, we manufacture remote area lights. So for a law enforcement agency, they wanted 5 of these lights. Seems so silly, but we just put a little cord in so we can we can charge all 5 lights in a bank and just deploy that. So I look at the complete solution of how do I get my stuff? Like, I love my organized kitchen, right? This is organization for the workplace, right? How do I get everything organized in the Pelican to make sure that we can just deploy? And like speaking on the LE side or from the firearm side, I just want to open up my kit, be at the range and be like, bing, bang, boom, cans here, eyes here, everything in one spot. The weirdest thing I've ever housed.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I want to hear that.
Would be for Fashion Week. Someone wanted to create a purse made of air. I don't even know what that means, but it was happy and protected. It didn't break in a Pelican case.
A purse made of air.
A purse made of air. I don't know. We love art. Whatever you got to do. We got you.
I have serious questions. And I understand you're trying to fulfill a need, but that one is weird to me.
Super weird. I mean, okay. Great. Fashion Week, ready.
All right. So let's bring it back to the first responder side of things and the interactions you get to have with them. Like talk to me about those folks and kind of some of the things that you're seeing them asking you for that may be changing. I mean, there's a lot more tech. I was just having a conversation here. We had a get together here at Red Dot Fitness the other night, and somebody brought one of their guests who was visiting from town who provides a lot of tech to the law enforcement. It's a third party agency, and actually Pelican came up because that's what they're using to put this tech in terms of tracking things. Let's just say the hardware for these tracking things and scanning things that they're using out there on the streets. But maybe talk about that and like some of the things that you're seeing and shifting, or maybe things are shifting, or what new needs are versus like you mentioned, and I think this is a really cool one, like being able to get all of your fire kit into a box so that it can be self-contained, right? Safe. Mm-hmm. They can later be deconned. You can decon the case, whatever else, and get it out there. Again, the lights, I think that's cool. That just makes sense. You have an onboard charging bank. You can plug basically, this is the way I picture it. Tell me if I'm wrong. The bank is inside the box, right? Your lights go inside the box, and you can basically, and then you plug those in on the inside, but then on the outside, you can basically plug the box into the wall to charge the bank that keeps your lights charged.
Yeah, dude, I sell a box. It's not rocket science. Like, I literally put rocket science into the box.
In the box. Yeah, I love it.
Keeps it fun.
I love that.
LE stuff. So I'm a nerd, right? My career has kind of flirted with tech along the way. The drone market is super cool right now. So I've got a company, they're called Photokite. They make a tethered drone. So you don't have to be this fancy dude driving a drone. They've got a deployable Pelican case. You flip the lid off and then the drone is tethered from there. So you can run that for LE. You can also run that for fire. And it's got integration with like stats and trackers to know your personnel inside, their meters on their Scott packs or their breathing apparatus, right? So you can track their metrics and see where they are from a employee management standpoint and personnel. That's super cool. I just love night vision. Anytime I can talk about night vision, that's really cool too.
Talk about it.
Expensive, high dollar items. You want to keep them safe when they're not deployed on your head. I put them in a Pelican case, right?
Yeah. Going back to the Photokite, I did see that. I saw that product showcase down in Texas back in March. I was down there for a basic SWAT school actually with the TTPOA, and they came out. And now that I think about it, it's exactly what happened. They basically just open this case and everything's right there, right? And they can send this thing up in the air and it sits there for a while. Again, just all the different places it can fit in. And you talk about like organization, and it might sound funky to people, but I think about this and how, and I've seen this in a few different agencies now where you walk in and everybody organizes their stuff very different, right? Similar, but different. Like, and it has to all be very accessible and obviously deployable. Pelican cases on everything. They're everywhere. So, yeah, obviously huge markets, for you to be involved in. I would assume that's very interesting. And for a person with the anthropology background and getting to study people and stuff, I mean, that's got to be really cool for you.
Listen, it's not the studying of people. It's just people giving information to me. And then I'm relaying that to product folks. And basically, I'm shortening the gap of how we're designing stuff. So I do a lot of custom foam and having, a specialized foam interior for your solution. Sometimes your needs change. And now we have a new product set called Reset, where you just like depress they're like reprogrammable little foam buttons that you press down instead of pick and pluck that like you just throw out after one cut and usage. You can change your kit. So if you get a new optic on your rifle, or you're saying some of your long range stuff is a little bit different, you can repurpose the case. So you're not buying 3 Pelican cases. Me, the sales girl, I would love to sell you 3 Pelican cases, but right. I'm a real person and like space is real. Do you have room for 3? Is your wife going to kick your gear out of the garage? Like, where are you keeping it? So 1 case, 3 uses, and that's all product driven from like end user conversations, whether it's at a trade show or people send me texts all the time being like, hey, like I need to fit this in a case. Here's the function. So there's different solutions for the interior. And to your point, everybody's different. Just like you rattled off all of your Pelican cases you have, people come up to me and they're like, look what I have. Right. Like, oh, bro, I'd love to see it. And at first I was like, why are you telling me all this? And then I took a step back and I was like, you know what? It's so important. People are so passionate about their hobbies and how they carry around kit or carry around a purse full of air, whatever that means. Pelican's just happy to be there along with for the ride, right?
Yeah, I love that. So one more question on that. Just again, there could be people listening to this go, yeah, dude, they're plastic cases. I get it. They protect stuff, and I don't have high dollar equipment like night vision and drones and firearms or whatever that I need to travel with that way. I have my soft case. It's fine. I throw it in the back of my car, or my trunk, or my truck, or whatever else, and it's fine. I wonder about just kind of the more consumer industry, or consumer market for, the everyday Joe and some of the things that you see people using these things for. Like, what are some of the more popular products there?
Sure. So we just had an awesome launch at the top end of this year into Pelican travel. So all of our, maybe we don't need a hard case. Now we have a consumer focused luggage. We also manufacture our coolers domestically in the States. So kind of a fun, we're traveling, we've got coolers, just like I didn't want to pair firefighting with cigar and a bourbon, but sometimes I need to put my beer and keep it cold for 7 to 10 days in an American made cooler. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's a fun play. And I've always said, I sell in the commercial world, but a commercial customer is also a consumer that likes to kick back. So we have a full suite of really cool lifestyle items that are made here, consumed here, whatever you need.
Right. Okay. So just so obviously a lot of opportunity at the company. I just wonder about like your opportunities there, and getting into this. And I don't know if you could have ever assumed you'd be wearing as many hats as you're wearing now, and how this thing has evolved. And you're talking about your team and all the different things that you do. I wonder what this looks like for somebody like you, just like from the sales process, or on the sales end of things, but also in this, I guess, customer relationship piece and the innovation piece and whatever else. Like, where does this go for you? Like, what do you see yourself doing? And it will be the same thing in 5 years. If you had to create your own position within Pelican beyond what you're doing now, what would it look like?
Sure. So I think my short-term goal is to create a role within the experiential, to marry the experiential brand component. So being a real person, taking everything that I hear from you, from people I meet out there, and really fostering like an authentic way of saying, hey, we make this stuff and here's how you use it, and make it purposeful instead of just putting a phone in a guy's hand at the firehouse to make sure he captures content, because that's not.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's tough. I mean, that's a big job, because again, just going back, like if you jump on the Pelican website and you start scrolling through there, like it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff there. Like, what's the right size? What's the right case? And you have to do a little bit of research, obviously as a consumer, to find the right thing for you. And you're trying to make your specific thing match. And I find that to be a tough thing to do when you have companies that have lots of different options. And there are a ton of different options. And it needs to be somebody on the front end of that, helping people boil that or streamline that process for themselves. Mm-hmm. And like many things, or like most things, where do you go for that information? You go to the internet, right? You go to social media to see how other people, or that person that you like to follow or does something similar to you, is using their own thing. And that's a great place to start. But that person isn't sending the message that Pelican necessarily needs or wants to send. They're sending their message about their thing. And again, this goes back to what you're doing, in the fire service from the social media side of things, is like somebody is going to send the message about your product. Somebody is. If you're making a good product, that's very helpful. But at the same time, like somebody else is going to tell your story, and unless you do it, somebody has to be out there doing it. So how do you want that story told? And are you really putting in? And are you really putting the effort to make sure that's done well, and doing again, I said this already, but like a cultural competency piece and an experiential competency perspective, like who's doing that and how are they doing that? And you use the word, which again, you also use this word, which is cliche, that, being authentic, that word can be, it's a good word. It just gets used too often, I think, inappropriately, because it's not genuine, it's not authentic. There's like an agenda behind this. And yes, Pelican needs to sell products, but we have plenty of products out there. It's like, what's the right product for you? You make the choice. And if I do a good job and it's like joining the fire service, like we need firefighters, we need volunteer firefighters. Who is telling that story? Is it just the young kid who's really good on social media and understands algorithms and how to edit videos and whatever, putting stuff out, and it's getting, likes, and I've heard this before, it's getting the same 40 likes every time from the same 40 people, or are you actually making an impact? And that's what I love about your social media is it's every time it's something different, and it's kind of cool. It's just your own experience. It's short, sweet, to the point. It's all different kinds of things. It gives people an intro and leads them in the right direction to getting more information on what it should be. So again, going back to like the fire service piece, as it relates to a product like something that Pelican might be doing, whether it's a light or a case or something like that. It's companies doing a better job of putting the right people in front of their message, so that the consumer that's out there that they don't already have knows where this thing might fit in, or how I could be involved in the fire service or somewhat. And it again, people seem to struggle, which is why I wanted to talk to you about all the things, because you don't struggle. This is very natural for you, it seems. And I wonder about that. Like, did that take a lot of work, or is this just something that just easy for you?
Oh gosh. I mean, I've always had a lot of balls in the air, but I think they are all the same color and shape, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So it definitely takes some self-reflection and like drawing that line of what's too much. But yeah, I think that's me. I kind of like the hustle. And we spoke a little bit earlier about like the transition from athlete into this crazy career. And I think being like a collegiate athlete or just an athlete in general prepares you to, here's the task and here's all the crazy shit that's going to like come at you. And how do you achieve the best results, but also while being a real person along the way. Now I won't say authentic because you told me it's played out.
I appreciate that, but I love that piece. So just in kind of wrapping this up and taking it back to firefighting for a second, and again, because I think this is the middle piece that's so important in the connection to all of this. Not that being an athlete, working with the kids, being the referee, being the student, all those things isn't important because it makes you who you are, obviously, and those are very personal things that you are obviously bringing to all these other components, whether it's working for somebody else or volunteering for somebody or whatever else. But I wonder, like, advice that you might give to the community at large. So that's going to be parents, that's going to be kids, that's going to be uncles and aunts and sisters and brothers and all of those kind of things about the life of service, and particularly in the world of firefighting, volunteer or not, in terms of getting involved, to learn more, to explore this a little bit more. What things would you say? How do you direct them in a path? Because I'm going to say it, I'm just going to give you my honest opinion. I don't think the news out there on the street specific to what firefighting really is, the challenges that exist, the obvious and the benefits that exist by being a firefighter, I think it's very similar. It's not the same, but it's very similar to law enforcement. I don't think that story being told right now is a good one. I think the fire service and law enforcement does a terrible job at telling their story, and I think it's oftentimes around optics, and those optics are, let's make sure we don't say anything that's wrong, right? Whatever that might be, right? That might hurt somebody's feelings or make us look bad, or there's going to be backlash or something I'm going to have to answer to. And I respect and appreciate that. Like, I get it. Like, there's a lot to do out there, and the last thing we want to do is make people upset about anything. However, I'll also say this, like, I think the energy gets misdirected. And if you're not telling your story as a service provider, like a first responder, somebody else is going to do it for you. And it's going to be the thing that gets the most likes, gets the most attention, gets the most views, and whatever else out there. So I think that's what our kids are seeing. I think that's what our youth is seeing. The up and coming potential firefighter who may be now getting turned off because he's seeing stuff and hearing other firefighters that are taking the opposite approach to this and saying, like, hey, you're seeing agency, X say this very specific thing about what we do, and here's the realities of what that is over here, and there's no in between. And so we need to come closer to the middle on, like, how do we make that better? And when I say better, I mean the messaging that ultimately gets the right people in the job to help make the changes, to provide back to the community both what the community values, what the firefighters value, what the agency and the city or the county values. Those things are really important to me. And I see this struggle happening. So with the kids that are seeing all this, and maybe there's some other stuff in there, what advice would you give people in terms of their approach to looking at this as a really good career path for people? And again, you're not getting paid by this particular thing, but for those that do need and want to get paid, and those that maybe just want to be involved.
Listen to my free advice here with someone that chose career and volunteer. No, so to your point of what you see on the media, you're often looking at like the homeowner's worst day where their house burns down, right? So that is a reactive response that fire and LE is forced to respond to because it already happened. So my point to you from a media perspective is control the narrative and celebrate all the good stuff behind the scenes, right? That house fire, unfortunately, there's going to be bad stuff that happens. It's celebrating the success along the way. So is it Tuesday night taco night at the firehouse? Are you having a communal dinner? Are you, celebrating the sheetrock guy who is doing this on the side? Like, celebrate and look at the person versus the job. And I think there's good people out there. And if you take that lens, that's how I would be attracted to that if you're looking at the community.
So tell me if I'm wrong here, but what I'm hearing you say is focus on the people doing the job, right? Mm-hmm. And the wins that they're getting and the human side of that. Mm-hmm. The people
Job's
that are out there.
Be there.
Yep. Exactly. Man, I mean, those are truer words couldn't be spoken, right? Like that there's always going to be something there. And behind every one of these things are the people that are actually doing the job, right? And what does that look like? Who are they? And what's the story behind that? What sacrifices have they made? What are the extra things that they do? How are they successful? Maybe even some of the challenges that they faced along the way. I think that's just talking about the people that do the work. And the story is there, right? The story is in that, and you got to trust that that's going to resonate with people. And if that's the person that you're propping up, I would assume that's the type of person that you want on your agency, right? That's the person you want on your team. So why not talk about that person and the things that they're doing? And not that they're perfect, right? But this is an example, right, of who we are and what we want, rather than some contrived sizzle reel of things, right? That is, well, I would just say is not very transparent to what the realities of who you're going to be working with when you get here. Mm-hmm. I think that's the world in general. Obviously, we're sending highlight reels all the time. It doesn't necessarily have to be, overdone, but I love that perspective. And I think most people that do the job would agree with you. As long as you're doing it with the right person, right? And you're propping up the right stuff. I don't know how you feel about that, but
yeah, be a good one. Like, I'm not there's crappy ones all over the place, but make the right choice, celebrate everyday successes. And I think I try not to sell. So I feel like you're looking at me for some, like, this is the volunteer firefighter way. It's just a lifestyle that is so rewarding. And I think most folks that you talk to, I hope, share the same humility as me. It's lessons you can't even articulate. So that's all I have to share to, go out, meet, to the point of your daughter or stepdaughter, pop in your local firehouse. Those firefighters would love to spend 5 minutes, probably an hour with you. Just pop in. There's good people everywhere.
Great advice. I think that's great advice. You have to be proactive in seeking those messages and those relationships or those experiences too, and not expect it's going to be delivered to you. And unfortunately, as you already stated, a lot of times that stuff gets delivered on your worst day. Is that really how you want to find out about this, or want to learn about it? I understand a lot of people do, but no. Kim, that's why I wanted to ask you the question. That's why I wanted to talk to you, because I do find you to be very real and, again, at risk of the cliched term authentic. There's a genuineness there, and it comes out in everything that you do, and it's not hard for you. It doesn't appear hard, and I think it would have come up in this time that we've been talking if it was tough for you, and it's clearly not. And I don't understand why so many people are making it tougher than it needs to be. And so that advice is perfect advice. Like, you're not selling it. You're just being you and one of those people on the inside. I think people can take a lot, can and should take a lot away from that. I think there's places for all kinds of different messages to be sent and stories to be told. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. I think it's all important. People need to know, but it needs to come from that. It needs to come from what you just said, is like, be a good person, right? Do a good job, right? Stay connected to the reasons you did this thing you're doing this thing in the first place. Tell those stories, and you'll likely attract the people that want to have a story of their own and be part of that story with those other folks. Again, I don't think it's that tough, but I see people just really challenged with it, and it's a real hot topic in the first responder community right now about what the realities are and how to overcome some of the challenges that we have. And it starts with, and they'll tell you every time, it starts with the people. It starts with good people doing a good job. And that's, again, when I got connected with you, I'm like, That's why I want to talk to this person. That's why I want to talk to Kim. Good person doing so many things for so many different people at so many different levels. And I think what you find, and this is what I found in all these podcasts that I've done with so many guests that I've had, is it's the same type of person. They're all stretched. They're all doing, you mentioned juggling, right? They're all juggling so many things, and it's all giving back to somebody with no expectation outside of like, I hope by doing this, I get to feel good on the inside when that person gets the help that I'm able to provide them. So whether that's getting them into the product that protects their expensive, equipment or whatever else, showing up to a call where you're rescuing a cat out of a tree, or, stopping the neighbors' houses from burning down, when that person in the middle's house is burning down or whatever else. I think those are easy stories to tell, man. And I just encourage you to keep doing it, because I've enjoyed watching you do what you do. And I appreciate your time today and talking to me about it. So
I so appreciate that. I have an ask for you. If listeners
go
have
for it.
Survived to the end of this podcast, if they have their craziest Pelican experience or craziest stuff that you value in a Pelican case, I would love to know about it. So drop a comment below. And it's always fun to experiment to see kind of battle wounds of, this Pelican fell out of a helicopter with me, or just crazy stuff, just to keep that story going, if your folks could share.
Oh, I love that. I'll just come over the top and say, again, going back to my own experience and why I have so many Pelican products is exactly that. What I saw was how people were using their equipment, and how did that work? How was that going to work for me? Like, obviously I've seen them around, but now I'm actually going to invest in one of these things to protect my investment. Like, I got on social media and I looked at how other people were using their cases. So it's so important. Like, that was important for me as a consumer. So I love that ask, and absolutely. I try and do that when I'm out, but I'll also say this. Because it's so integrated in my life and it's such a regular part of my life, right? It's like, putting my shoes and socks on every day. Like, I don't think like that. So reminding them, to post that stuff and put it out there when they are using it, it's a good reminder for me too. I'll make sure I continue to do that too every time my stuff goes in the box. We'll
Tag me. I love sharing it. It gets a little weird sometimes, but I will share it all.
Right. Well, listen, again, so appreciate your time. Always when people spend their time with me and give me their energy, I'm always grateful. So thanks for doing that. I don't know what it would be outside of trying to extend the message that you just put out there, which is, hey, show your Pelican stuff, show me how you're using it, and let me help you spread the word. I'm happy to do that. If there's anything else that I can do for you in the future at any point, tag me, I guess is what I would say. But at the same time, like, don't ever hesitate to ask, because I'm happy to do it. I think I love what you're doing. I love where you're coming from. And I think, the message that you're bringing to the volunteer firefighting world, again, that's the first time I've actually ever heard it. So
we learned something new. That's a good day.
This is why I do it, right? It's just, it's gaining and spreading, the knowledge that I can gain, and hopefully sharing other people's journeys. And so hopefully somehow it helps them. So again, Kim, at risk of overdoing it, I appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And I wish you the best of luck in all the things that you're doing.
Thanks for having me.